Coast to coast.
Yeah, a couple of times.
So, welcome everyone to today's session. We have with us three really inspiring, awesome speakers, and we'll talk about business development and sales specialist roles. So we are actually a group of we are a STEM group who are aimed at supporting each other. So we are called STEMPeers, and we were formed in 2015. And we, as you can see in this slide, we have quite a lot of achievements and chapters over the years. And then 2018, we opened the European chapters of STEMPeers, which is called EuroSTEMPeers. And today we have our, not sure how many, but we do a lot of these online panel discussions where we talk about different roles in industry, and especially how, as academicians, we can navigate into these roles to know more about these. And today we have our three guests who will talk about business development and sales roles. And just to tell you a bit more, EuroSTEMPeers will have their annual meetup again this year in Heidelberg on 28th and 29th June. So do check out our social media pages to see how to register in future, and we'll give more updates about it. So now coming to today's event, we have with us, just a second. Yeah. As you know, we have with us three speakers. First, we have Ganesh. Ganesh Kumar, who holds a master's in chemical and bioprocess engineering from the Technical University Hamburg-Harburg. He started his career as a process development engineer at Lonza in 2013, then moved to Sartorius in 2016, where he took on various roles. Currently, he serves as the head of process solutions sales for Eastern Europe, Middle East, and Africa, demonstrating his expertise in sales and leadership in the bioprocessing sector. So, hi, Ganesh.
Hi.
Welcome to our panel discussion today. Next, we have Arumugham Raghunathan, also known as Ragoo by all of us, holds a PhD in neurobiology from University of Hyderabad, and then completed postdoctoral research at Wesleyan University and Yale University. Since 2000, he has held various roles in prominent biotech companies such as QIAGEN, Sigma, and Horizon Discovery. Currently, he serves as the Senior Director for Business Development at Inspero in Boston. Ragoo is an integral mentor at STEMPeers, where he shares his expertise with aspiring professionals in STEM fields. In his spare time, he likes drawing, painting, playing ping pong, and pickleball. Hi, Ragoo. You told us that you are really good at pickleball.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. Then we have Priya, who will be our moderator, and also we'll be happy to know more about her as well, because she is also in BD. So Priya Gurumoorthy is a protein scientist with a PhD from Goethe University and postdoctoral experience from Johannes Kepler University, Linz, and Max Planck Institute for Biophysical Chemistry. In 2021, she transitioned into a science and innovations manager role at MK2 Biotechnologies. Subsequently, she shifted gears to business development within the same company. Presently, Priya holds the position of head of business development, where she leads strategic initiatives and drives growth opportunities for the organization. And she is also a professional Veena player and has been performing in Germany since 2010 with local artists, and also has been teaching actively. Hi, Priya. It's nice to have you too. And I will, yeah, so I'll hand it over to you for the next part of the talk.
Thanks a lot, Jagriti. Thanks for that lovely intro of all the three of us. I would kind of kickstart this discussion by first maybe giving out a very broad definition of what is business development. I presume a lot of us have heard more about sales, and we identify more with what sales is. So I'm going to start off with a very broad definition of what business development is, and then, of course, juggle questions out to Raghu and Ganesh. So the generic definition of business development is, of course, to identify, or the role of a business developer within a company is to identify commercial opportunities that would benefit the company, to identify strategic initiatives, to identify synergies for potential collaborations, and so on. And the simple layman definition is to identify the client's pain point in order so that you could supplement, or rather you could find solutions within your own company to solve the pain point. So somewhere it's very related to what most of you would experiences that most of you would have developed as PhDs or postdocs alongside. So you really have to first just identify your problem, and that's mostly the bread and butter of everyday business, of what most business developers do. Of course, depending on the company, the size of the company, location, and there are multiple roles within this large area of BD. But in short, this would be the generic definition of what business developers or business development entails. So it actually kickstart by asking both maybe Ganesh first and then Raghu of how their day looks like. So just right to the core question. So what do you do in the day, the minute you get your coffee, Ganesh, when you go into Sartorius? What do you do?
That's a good question, right? So, and it's also depends on what's on the table, because like as you said, in the beginning. So part of every one of us at Sartorius, or even myself, when we are at sales, so we wear different hats, right? So when we talk about let's say a size of a company like Sartorius, 16,000 employees, 4 billion in revenue, things like that. So it's like we have very, very what you call on a high level, very stark, let's say roles, sales, marketing, and then operations, things like that, just so that a big company can function. And then let's say if you take a role like myself in sales, then it's mostly about as a head of sales. On one part, it's about working with marketing, working with product groups to really understand, look, what are the customer, or let's say what are the market trends, what are the workflows, down to those workflows. Let's say if you take biotechnology or bioprocessing, what is the drug development cycle, again, down to the pain points, what are they experiencing, and then really kind of see, okay, where is the funnel for us? Where can we really build the funnel, right? So where are areas where Sartorius solutions or products can be of value? And then that would match exactly, as you said, the needs of a scientist or a researcher or a manufacturing person sitting in, a corner of the world, or in a lab, or in a company, right? So that is one part of the role, really working with groups on business development, or in this case, sales funnel development, as we call it. So different language. And then the other part is also a more administrative role as well, because 16,000, okay, I'm not managing 16,000, but at least in the area, I have 45 people roughly, so scattered all over the globe. So if you take my region, so it's East Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So it goes as east as St. Petersburg, as west as Vladivostok, close to the border of Korea, then as south as Durban or Johannesburg in South Africa, right? So it covers the whole peninsula. So that means you will have to deal with not just different territories, but also teams, your teams in different territories, and also the customers. So it's a lot to do with understanding other culture, being more open, being more receptive to feedback, and kind of nurturing an environment where, people feel their opinion is valued, and, you kind of put forth your ideas, and then there is kind of what you call a feeling of belonging and motivation to kind of work for the company, and also end of the day to solve the customer needs. So I think that's kind of the other part, what I do in my typical workday. And then the most fun part for me is, keeping the science with me still, right? So I'm an engineer by education, and in my 8 years or 9 years now at Sartorius, the hat I always wore was working closely with product development, working on next generation technologies, being part of the steering committee for key product launches, getting data, identifying key collaboration partners for a certain product launch, or even helping the company with kind of thought leadership articles or a go-to-market for a certain product or campaign launched, right? So this is my typical workday.
Great, thanks, Ganesh. Raghu, would you like to add to that?
Sure, I'm amazed by Ganesh's workday. I think he also has 24 hours a day, right? You also have 24 hours? I also have 24 hours. I don't know how you achieve so much. Oh my God, that's cool, awesome, impressive.
Thank you.
To answer it a different way, I like to take things very practical and in a way that's pretty frank, because when I was approaching stuff, I wanted people to tell me the facts, right? So what do you do in a day? How does a day look? My day looks like what you're looking at me right now, sitting in front of the computer most of the time, right? So, and what does that entail? That entails looking at the computer, responding to emails, making phone calls, making strategic decisions, talking to my boss, talking to my customers, talking to my colleagues, enabling things, right? So what does that mean, right? So that means the main role, as Priya and Ganesh established, is that you're there to generate revenue for the company, right? Business development. You have been assigned to bring in a particular amount of dollars or euros or whatever currency you have. And how do you do that? How do you achieve it? And I should design my day by the best way that I can make that happen, right? So as Ganesh mentioned, we need a pipeline. We need to build a good pipeline. And what is a pipeline? Pipeline is a list of opportunities, list of deals, list of projects that you're talking to customers that will lead eventually to bring in money, right? So depending on each customer's conversation, I have to move that one step closer to bringing in the purchase order, bringing in the money to the company. So how would I do that? I would follow up with everyone, as many as possible, on a daily basis to move it forward. That could be by email, it could be by phone or group chats, talking to the technical people within the company, right? So typically that's what the day would look like. How I would split that and how I would achieve that and how would I get some mental sanity, take a break, take a lunch break, all that matters on your work habits, right? People can screw up their work day by sitting all the time at the computer or not giving enough time at the computer. You have to get your priorities right. Take care of your health as well. I'll stop with that because I know you have many more questions.
Thanks, Raghu. That was very precise and well put. So I have already one very burning question because I think three people want to ask the same. What's the difference between marketing, sales, and I'm going to add my part to it, and BD? So what is so different between these three terminologies? Are the same? Are they really different? What is the overlap there? Would you take that from me, Raghu, considering you were answering the previous one?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to answer that. Coming from, I don't know how many people are here who've held a commercial career or an academic career in India and they come over here. But I think it's a very clear distinction I've seen between sales and marketing here compared to in India, Indian market scenario. So in my mind, the person talking to the customer or the salespeople, BD people, are people who are talking directly to the customer and making the sales happen. They're the face of the company. And marketing people enable everything that the salespeople can take and achieve their goal, right? So for example, there has to be a strategy. Who do you go talk to? How do you talk to them? What do you tell them? What data do you present and convince the customer about a sale? All the material, collateral, flyers, brochures, all of that is created by the marketing people. They take the responsibility to highlight or showcase what you have, right? And then they also make sure, depending on different companies, different countries, different work behaviors, they're also responsible for making sure you have enough of the product, you have enough capacity of the product, you have inventory, you can supply within the timeline. So making sure the product or service is available and in demand, and finding out which areas are in demand, what is the market, what is the, extent you can sell. All of that is taken care by the marketing. Salespeople are the foot soldiers. They go out there, identify the opportunity, make the necessary meetings, and convince the customer to buy it, right? So they are the people who are transacting the business. They're the people who are facing the customer, meaning if something goes wrong, they get blamed. If something goes right, they get the credit. So they come back, and many people ask, why do salespeople get paid a lot? Because they are the frontliners. The first bullet hits them, right? In a war scenario. So that is, I'd say, the main difference. But then when you come between sales and business development, there's a lot of splitting hairs, right? So sales, I consider it's more of a transactional role, where you're going to a person, trying to identify what the needs are, providing for their needs, and satisfying that. And in return, you're generating revenue. With business development, it's a little bit more involved, I would say. It's more involved because you're not only trying to provide them a transactional reaction, but you're also trying to understand what they need, why they need it for, what else could they use, and how long would they need it, what could you predict that they would need in 6 months, and then build a whole case around that sale. It's not just that one particular transaction, right? It's a whole business case that you're developing. That's why it's a business development. You're developing from what you see to where you can be. And then keeping that in mind, you build a case around it. And then you're not only selling what you have in your hand, but it could be something in the future, which you take back as idea to your company. And based on that, new products or services could be developed, right? So there's a whole lot of it. And then if you ask me, in BD, again, depending on where you're working, your roles could be different. So for example, in academic, BD could be something from in biotech companies to pharma companies. So there's a differentiation in the same word, in the same title, in 3 different places, depending on where you work. For example, I'll just say one example is in academics, you might be looking at technology transfer. You might be looking at technologies. You might be looking at how to patent out or license out the technologies to industries. That is BD, a role of BD there. In biotech, it could be closely related to sales, like I was saying earlier, transacting and bringing in money and building business around that particular need. And in pharma, it's totally different, where you could be transacting or talking about licensing out an asset. It could be a drug. It could be something else. It could be wholesale distribution of a certain drug. So there's different roles depending on where you work. So that's a distinction in my mind. Be happy to expand, but I'll give opportunity to others to talk as well.
Great. Thanks, Raghu. Ganesh, you mentioned you mentioned about, of course, dealing with different cultures in your day-to-day business, being being responsible for a larger area geographically. How, and of course, Raghu and both of you mentioned there's a lot of talking involved in your everyday to-day business. Yeah. How do you or could you expand with an example? How do you think culture and the language that you speak, so how have you seen it majorly influence your role? How agile and how adaptable do you have to be? So Raghu also mentioned the Indian marketing scenario being very different from the US marketing scenario. And I can just imagine the EU marketing scenario is very different. So how could you just, put in some examples, say how, how these 3 regions how you, in your experience, find them different? How does your language change when you talk to marketers from these regions, salespeople from these regions?
So it's a good question, right? So I think I think the key part here is, this model of DAC, what I call it, right? So DAC is an acronym for direction, alignment, and commitment, right? So what is a key enabler for this is communication, right? And then in such a typical what you call to going back to that discussion. So when you're in a role with an interface to a customer or a market or sets of market representing customers, right? Then be that marketing, be that business development, be it sales. The key part is how we communicate, how we kind of understand the requirements or the needs of the stakeholder on the other side, right? So that could be, if you're talking about business development, just an example, right? So take a certain region or a market somewhere in Europe, how I deal with it, or let's say how our team deals with it is, okay, we say, okay, what are the regional needs, right? So and in any cases, so when you're talking about the sector of biotechnology or bioprocessing, biopharma, these are basically companies, right? So companies which are in different stages of their development cycle, right? So a company is like a baby. You have startups, more fresh, they have different sets of needs. Yes, some are driven by funding, some already have funding, but then some have needs to be faster to the market. But then you have sometimes more mature companies in the region. Let's say, Raghu, as you may know, Takeda's of the world or Pfizer's of the world, so they have totally different sets of needs. And there are players aspiring to be the Pfizer's of tomorrow, right? So just an example. So it's just that. So you try to see who are the sets of people on the other side you have to deal with. Try to look at their profile. Again, one thing is the profile of the company, right? And the other thing is the profile of the people within the company. So I think as business developers, you may know the aspect of personas, right? So how does, if you're talking about, selling some kind of what you call process development lab, just an example, right? To enable some research, then you would typically see who are the sets of stakeholders that are involved. So of course, right? So the baseline is sometimes you have a mix of a technical person, a management person, procurement person, engineering person, things like that. And again, you go to the next level of detail, and then you kind of see what are all the requirements on these other sides the different stakeholders have. And then it really comes down to what I said, this model of DAC, right? What do they need? And what is the kind of solution that we give, or what is the path forward we have to kind of take in order to fulfill their needs, to make them go to the next step, right? So be it in a developing country or a developing company or a developed company. So this aspect to talk to these stakeholders, agree on a mutual direction, and then align on actions that are needed to get to a direction, and then get that commitment, right? So that commitment could be, as business developers or marketers saying, okay, we may give you the strategic push that is needed, or injection of cash or collaboration or whatever, right? And then as sales sometimes come and say, hey, look, yes, we will put out a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan to look at your demand, to look at your training, to enable your people, things like that. So if you're a startup, so it's really about then committing, aligning on certain actions and getting that commitment from different stakeholders. So I think this is how, for me, communication plays out in different areas, so be it different regions or different sets of companies. And this is where, depending on certain cultural aspects, what you will align on or commit on could also differ, right? So it could be sometimes price, it could be the technicalities, it could be something else. And I would apply the same example to also when dealing with people internally. So internally, it's also quite a diverse team. And sometimes, the aspect of managing, or let's say dealing with stakeholders internally is also often overlooked. When you're in an organization with one brand name, like, I don't know, company X, right? We all think, look, we all work for company X, so whatever we talk is already mutually agreed, right? So this is never the case. So again, you will always have to see, from the viewpoint of the other person, number one. And then where there is a difference in, where there is diversity in thought, we have to encourage diversity in thought. Where there is diversity in thought, we also then have to say, okay, what is then where is the point where we are working for the company's interest, or where we can strive to work towards the company interest, and where are we working towards our interest, because this is again sometimes, comes in the way, right? So then this is also important that, this DAC model is applied. So end of the day, when you're working for an organization, it should always be for the organization's interest, right? So you align on that interest, and then you try to see how it benefits you, and then you kind of move on. So this is how we work.
Ganesh, thanks. Thanks so much. That was very well explained. So this is a nice question. Do you think, so Raghu, I'll direct this to you. Do you think that introverts and extroverts can equally thrive in this role? Or do you really have to be an extrovert and talk a lot? What's your take on it?
Yeah, good question. I think a lot of people have asked me this as well. And I think it's important to understand this. But I just want to step back into the previous question you asked. I thought something needed to be added to that, if you don't mind. You're talking about languages and communication and how do you relate to different people and stuff. I want to say that, people buy from people, right? Not company. Very rarely they go to a company and say, oh, I want a TV, I have to go to Sony, right? You could buy it from Sony TV, you could buy a Sony TV, but you're buying it from the person. And if you don't like the person, you're not going to buy from them. Quick example, I went to buy a car. I wanted to buy a Camry, right? So I went to this showroom and this guy was being an ass, right? So he was putting me down, right? If you start negotiating, that's what you do when you go to buy a car. And if you start demeaning a person or demeaning the country you're coming from, or you demean the whole process of negotiation, why would I buy a car from him? Right? I got up, I said, I want to talk to your manager. I talked to the manager and got out. I went to another Toyota dealer. He lost a $30,000 order that day, right? So it's important to be a person, human to human. And how do you become that effectively is by relating to the person. So first thing I do when I have a call with the customers, I look up their LinkedIn profile. I see where they came from. I see who they're connected to. Which school did they go to? What did they do? What is their background? I also try to find out other things during conversation, doing small talk, which will again be part of the answer to the next question, being an extrovert, introvert, will give you so much more information with which you can relate to a customer. The different types of selling, right? One is relationship building. You have to build a relationship with the customer, be it however it is, right? So they have to relate to you. So how would you relate to me? When we started an introduction, I said, hey, looking at your name, it looked like a Bangalore name. And immediately my goal is I need to get a smile out of the other person's face. That means they're relating to me, right? So I will use any excuse which makes sense to relate to the person. And that's where this culture, language, everything comes together, right? You should be able to relate to the person. It has a lot of value. And when they leave the conversation, they'll still remember you. And when they remember you, if they want that product, they will come back to you. Or if they want the service, they come back to you. That's how I think it's important to keep that relationship and the culture, language thing going. Coming back to the main question in hand, introvert versus extrovert. I think everybody, if you leave them in a room by themselves, they're extroverts. They're talking to themselves, they're happy, they're laughing. That's the characteristic of any person, right? So, but when you put them in a room, they could become silent, meaning they don't want to go and talk to multiple people. But if you pull them aside and talk to them alone, they will talk to you because they have so many things in their mind and everybody wants to share information if it is in the right place in the right environment, right? So when you say, should I be an introvert or extrovert to go into the business, you can be successful being an introvert. But when you are talked to, you need to talk. Or you need to be able to talk to one person. And I'd say, how can you overcome that feeling of being introvert? The question is, all you have to think in your mind is, I'm talking to this one person, right? You don't have to be talking to everybody at the same time every time, but it'll help to be an extrovert, meaning the inhibition will be less. The inhibition and go and talk to a new person a stranger, asking them a question out of the blue, all of that comes mostly by a quote unquote extrovert person. They're more comfortable doing it.
Yeah.
Introverts are less comfortable doing it. But if you are an introvert and want to say, is this a profession that I could take and be successful? There's no doubt you can be successful, even being an introvert. I've seen many salespeople at conferences sitting on their own, doing their business, right? It doesn't mean you just have to be up and bubbly all the time, right? So yeah, you don't have to be an extrovert to take this job, but it will definitely help. You will probably create more opportunities than others, than an introvert salesperson, BD person, but it definitely helps being an extrovert.
So
Did that answer the question?
it perfectly did. And I would like to add, though I'm moderating this, I think I'd like to add a little from my side over to what Raghu said. I would technically term myself as an introvert if I have to bring in a personal, caricature or whatever over here. And like he said, I'm not always the first person to talk about everything, but then I really have a few pointers which I break ice. And another thing is somehow people like to break ice with, let's call it political alignments in these conferences. And I again want to be political. So I always pick weather, family, a company or their previous experiences when I want to talk about, when I want to break the ice and, start talking to them about something. So, and it's right, I don't talk to every person at the conference. That's not my agenda. So being an introverted person, I also like my space and I kind of pick who I want to, who I want to really target. And then when I'm done, I want to have my coffee by myself for 15 minutes, recharge and then go. So I don't think it definitely helps if you can immediately have a conversation with everybody, but it's not a no-go if you're an introverted person. So the next
Yeah, I think
question.
the right word we are looking for, sometimes I use this ambivert. We just need to know what is the right point. We have to be an introvert, or let's say
Yeah.
not an introvert, where we have to just listen first to the other
Yeah.
side, see what the needs are, as Raghu really said, try to build the relationship. And then, where you have to talk, you have to not be shy, being an
Exactly.
extrovert, right? This is where your other part of the personality comes out.
That's true. Agreed to that entirely. So the next question I have over here is, what does someone do who's out fresh as a postdoc or as a PhD? How do you specifically tailor your CV if you have no previous work experience? Yeah. What would you like add to your CV with a PhD and a postdoc, but no sales experience, no strategic corporate experience, and so on? Ganesh, would you like to take this one?
It's it. No, I can just speak. What is most important is it's not the degree that I mean, degree is of course important, right? But let's say when you're looking for jobs, it's very important to know what your requirements are. What is the role that you see, professionally when entering into, I would say, let's say, a professional environment in any kind of company. So you have to at first identify, hey, look, with my background or so, am I already confident enough to make a transition to sales? If so, what are the requirements of such a sales role? And then what are my capabilities today of such a role? Or let's say, where are my gaps or what do I need to work? This is
How would you
simply
suggest like tweaking a person's CV? So a person is super fresh. Let's say I have a PhD in an entirely unrelated field, probably cardiology or something, entirely unrelated right now, and I want to enter BD. So I'm not doing hardcore. I'm not entering as a scientist into that particular company. So I'm not going to be doing work on their assets, but I'm actually going to rather have to, showcase the assets. So I'm the BD person. So what skills would you add if this is what I have, a master's or a PhD or a postdoc in cardiology? So how would you kind of how do you see the CV? So whatever I have my specialization, call it. What do you want to see in my CV so you can take it further?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would like, let's say we can all agree, is that we would love to see what kind of understanding that person has on that specific market where the company deals with, right? So if you are trying to, enter into business development for, let's say, a person from cardiology for a company working in gene therapy, just as an example, right? Then we would like to know, okay, what does that person understand about gene therapy market in general, right? So it could be, related to certain diseases, cardiovascular diseases or conditions or so, having some statistics, the trends, what's going on in that field, the exposure he or she has, and this is very important, the market knowledge. The market knowledge is obviously a very important criteria. And then definitely the second part is to, I would say, find out, though that person may come from a different field, it's to understand what part of the skill set or knowledge can be transferred or can be applied, right? So there's always a set of transferable skills. And this definitely applies to me because 14 years ago, if you asked me if I were have this career path, I would have said, forget about it, no chance, right? So I always imagine myself to be the scientist or someone, working in a lab, developing a drug, which I did. But then what I understood, over the decade is that there are a lot of skill sets that you can transfer yourself to. So, and that advice to the candidate, is that look for what transferable skills that company would seek, when you're a person from X field entering to a business development company. So what are the typical sets of skills that, these, let's say, business development profiles seek? So it could be, extrovert or ambiverts, as we said, market knowledge, connecting to the customers, and end of the day, you're talking to people. And as Raghu said, who would be the other side, the personality on the other side. So it could be, when you're business developers, you could be talking to one day a CEO of a company. So you need to have the skill sets to be confidently be able to handle such a conversation. On the other side, you may be also talking to a technical person, right? So how would you engage with a technical person? So I think this is where confidence and ability to transfer some of the skills, this is important. And the third part, what I always seek in any role, right? So is the hunger to learn, hunger to strive, and hunger to kind of improve yourself every day. And I think and then also this ability to handle hard conversations better, because every day life is not easy, as we know. So every day things get hard. When you're in a professional environment, one day, I mean, the next day is always harder than the previous day. So is the thing when you are in such roles where there is a number attached to your performance. So you should be also able to kind of demonstrate that you can handle the pressure, not just handle the pressure, master handling the pressure end of the day. And that is the kind of things that you have to demonstrate when kind of crafting a CV, right?
Nice.
Yeah.
Great.
So if I can step in there,
Hey.
so I would like to talk about this with two perspectives, right?
Mhm.
One is the perspective of the hiring manager. One is the perspective of the student applying, right? So I'm a hiring manager. What do I want in this candidate? If I have to pick up the resume and see it, at this particular stage, reality is for every position, within 2 days or 3 days, say maximum 1 week of posting the job, there are minimum of 200 applications, right? So how would your application float up magically? How does that happen? That, if you can master that, you have a good chance of being looked at, right? So if I'm a hiring manager, if I pick up a resume, I want to make sure I spend the least amount of time and energy to bring this person up to scale, up to do his job without much supervision from my side. I want them to be a person who can come hit the road running, right? So what would I want? I want an exact match of the job requirement in the CV. That's not happening when you're a new person, right? So now the second perspective from the candidate side, I'm a postdoc or I'm a graduate and I'm applying for this job. How would I tailor my CV? That is the main question, right? You cannot fabricate your resume. Please do not lie on your resume, right? It is really, really bad. So you have done a PhD. That means you have analytical skills, right? You have convincing skills. You have sales skills, meaning you have sold your case. You have sold your principle of, concept, POC. You have convinced somebody that you're good enough to get a PhD. That is a fundamental skill. People, when they talk to me, I ask them, have you sold anything? And they say, no, I've not sold anything in my life. No, that's not true. You've sold so many things. When you're talking to your family, your wife, your kids, you want a TV, you want a motorcycle, you want a bicycle, you want anything, you're selling the case. You're convincing the other person that they need something or you need something that doesn't exist before. That is making a case. That is important. How effective you are, how convincing you are of that is what will make a difference. I had never sold anything before I went into a sales career, right? So, but what I had done was, though, in college, there was, they have open days in colleges in India where you have a little fair and you sell things and you play games and stuff. I had an omelet station. I brought 2 loaves of bread. I brought 2 dozens of eggs. I brought a stove from home. Investment was $300. I made $2,000 that day, right? Because people love omelets and eggs. I made omelets, put 2 eggs on bread on it, and sold it for 10 times the price. So I'm like, that's a sales skill. I'll be able to convince somebody, right? So how you bring out that attitude, right? You have to, first thing is change in your mindset. From academic to sales, BD, industry, any role you're taking, you have to change your mindset. You have to change the way you look at things, the way you approach things, the way you give value to things. Now, if you discover something in a lab, it is, wow, great, I got a paper. That is the value you see in it. I've advanced science a little. When it comes to business, it's totally different thing. I made this product, I made this technology work. Now, how much is it worth? Who else can use it? How much is it worth to them, right? You start seeing it in a different angle. It's the same achievement, but the value assigned is different. Once you can make that differentiation in your mind, you're ready to go into this role, right? And you have to make a commitment to yourself that I want to go into this role. You can say, I'm thinking of going there, I'm thinking of going to sales, but it never happens unless you say, I want to go into there, I'm ready to go into that, right? So how would you tailor your CV for that? You cannot make up things, as I said before. You describe your skill set and you show intention, right? In your resume, you have a section where you say things I'm working on, right? So say things I'm working on. I'm reading sales books. Pull out good sales books that you might find online, right? For example, here, I like to work with props, right? Go find a book, Challenger Sale, Spin Selling. There are multiple books for selling. Get those books, start reading them. Put it in your resume. What else is the resume for, right? Say, I am motivated, I'm interested in going into sales. I picked up this wonderful book, I'm reading it. So now I should also know that if the hiring manager has to hire me, he has to be comfortable. So I need to have the business acumen. I need to know the terms. I need to know what is a sales cycle. I need to know what is an opportunity. I need to know what is the meaning of closing a sale, right? So make efforts to demonstrate that in your resume. Yeah, that is the key point. Otherwise, I would not look at your resume if you just have academic listing on your resume, right? That makes the difference. Show intention, show motivation, change your mindset, approach it differently.
But if I had to ask you, just, if there's always this soft skill column in most CVs that I see, which just has 10 single words written out there, or 5 single words that I see in most CVs. And if I have to tell you, so of course I could show intention in a cover letter, but the first thing that catches eye is the first page of the CV, yeah? And if I have to tell you, give me 5 soft skills that you want to see in a person, or fundamental skills that you want to see in a person who wants to pursue a BD sales marketing role. What is it? Do I have to write talkative over there? Oh, what do you
No,
want?
I'd say, effective communication skills, right? Effective communication skills, negotiation skills, right? listening skills. You have to be able to listen and understand, listening and comprehensive skills, right? So I think these three will kind of highlight that
Other
you
two,
have,
yeah.
at least you understand what's necessary for that, right? And then analytical skills are also helpful, right? Analysis, market analysis. Um, and if you have any database management skills, right? Database management like CRMs, client relationship management skills, working with data, interpreting data, putting together a PowerPoint and presenting a PowerPoint slide. Obviously, if you're an academician, you have that, but you put that in the soft skills too, right? So I think those things will definitely help.
Great,
Yeah, I think
thank
if
Unless
you're
someone
also
else.
specifically someone, what you call in this case, starting from let's say transitioning from an academic background and having your
you.
first experience, right? Just your first experience in a BD environment, then yeah, I think what would be also important, as Vinay pointed out, is highlighting project management skills, right? So project management is a facet that is applied in all aspects of life, I would say. So that also applies to profession. And highlighting your project management relevant to what is required in a BD role, right? So as you said, okay, part of project management is okay, communication, how would you stakeholder management, customer management, and most importantly, as project managers or as postdocs or PhDs, you would have also done your own market research, to see whether your idea was at first feasible or not, right? So also highlighting the facets of market research, right? So market research is a principal thing, so you'd have to do that. And then also time management, because just like in academic environment, in commercial environments, every opportunity with a customer has a timeline, right? So it cannot be that a certain conversation takes 3 years to materialize. So maybe it takes 3 years to materialize, it is what it is. But then that's where project management comes in, because then you can say, okay, this is an opportunity 3 years down the lane. Okay, this will be prioritized in a different way, but then let me see where are the other ones where I can show impact to the organization in this quarter or in this year. So I think project management, or in this case, stakeholder management or opportunity management, it's a very key skill to highlight. And I think that is where, coming from a more PhD background or in a more senior way as a research fellow or postdocs, this is an often stronger skill set, which is valued, people coming from the academia.
True. Agreed. Project management is definitely something that I think all of us do in our academic roles, but we somehow overlook it or
Yeah.
believe that what the industry wants is very different and we don't know how to do it. And we don't really highlight project management skills. We've managed multiple projects and we've always dealt with multiple stakeholders. This includes collaborators, this includes talking with journals or reviewers, this includes talking internally with other collaborators within the same team or with cross-functional team with an entirely different lab who has a different set of skills. So I think these are, of course, skills and experiences that we need to highlight in a different light when it comes to tailoring the CV for these jobs.
Yeah.
The next question I'm going to start with you, Ganesh, is did you have any negative impressions about sales and business development before you got into it? And because I clearly remember you saying you would have never thought you'd be here 10 years ago. If somebody asked you, would said, no way, I'm not doing this, which is also something what I would have said. So
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you, was there a negative impression and has it changed? If yes, how has it changed?
I wouldn't say there was negative impression. I always looked up to people, folks who were handling business development or sales. The reason why I said I never imagined myself here is simply because 14 years ago, when you start your career, you always have the fear of the unknown, right? So this was more driving me into the direction of where I, typically say, okay, let me be in my comfort zone at first of a career, and then let's see where it takes me in a more scientific role. But then to the second part of the question, what changed? Everything changed, because when you start, I did not make that jump from a technical role to a BD role, specifically as the people ask the questions. But sometimes a career path can be that you transition more into a BD role or a sales role or any kind of corporate role over a period of time. And that was the thought process I had, because fundamental to success in any career is a thorough understanding of your field, right? And then be, of course, when you're a researcher working in an academic or a professional or an engineer also starting your career, you will have problems, right? So you will have problems in your project in a company or sets of projects or day-to-day life. You will try to solve it, teamwork and all these things, yes. But then what you will over a period of time, or let's say what changed for me was all of a sudden this ability to think the big picture, right? So are my problems just my problems? Or let's say, are the problems in this specific area of field, is it just related to this product or this modality or this workflow, right? Or is there more commonalities or other people have it? And how do you learn? So this ability to think big picture means all of a sudden you will start to approach different stakeholders. So in this case, though I was coming from a process development background, I started to interface with manufacturing to really understand, hey, do the cancer drugs that I produce, are they really scalable? Are they giving me equal results in a manufacturing environment? So is there reproducibility, comparability? Yes or no? No, then you start to work on it. Then you get your exposed to another problem, or you talk to another customer, you attend conferences, you meet different people, you connect with them and see, hey, are the problems the same? How are you working about it? Things like that. So the more interfaces you have, the more you try to see the big picture in your area of, let's say, at first in my area of technical expertise. So this helped me build the market knowledge, right? So all of a sudden, it's not just the experience related to a specific company, Lonza in a specific site, it's just then translated to, oh, okay, so this is let's say a challenge or sets of trends that was related to an industry. These are not just my pain points anymore. This is an industrial pain point. And then all of a sudden, then this helped me to make that next switch, right? So this was then entering into marketing in a more technical role, because marketing is not marketing. So, I mean, as people imagine, right? So there's not like one title called marketing and everybody does everything, right? So there are different roles to marketing. I think to simply uh, put it into 4 brackets. So marketing typically should answer 4 questions. So where to play, what to offer, how to win, and do how to do it, right? How to win. And the moment you figure out how to win, then someone has to do it to win, right? So 4 facets. And then for me, it was then what to offer, because from a technical side, when you say, okay, these are the market problems, then let's work collectively to solve those market problems. And then while you are working on a more technical aspect of marketing, again, pushing yourself, like, okay, if I have a certain challenge in this certain area, okay, so if I work on a solution, what is the business opportunity? Or let's say, what would be the business opportunity of my customer? Because sometimes that is also very important for business developers. Rather than me saying, hey, here is a product, take it, it solves your need. If I can go and tell a customer, here is the pain point that you have, and then I have a solution where, if you work on this, it will give you, I don't know, save your cost by 50% or increase your output by 50%, whatever, right? Then all of a sudden you get yourself exposed to numbers. So market numbers, sales figures, whatever, there's we always deal with numbers, but the units of the numbers change from grams per centimeter or whatever to dollars or euros, right? So this, you make the next transition. And then yeah, I mean, over a period of time, how it changed was also interacting with customers, internal stakeholders, always talking about different problems of customers, trying to quantify different problems of customers. And that led me more to a marketing role. So I know there is another aspect of business development, which we did not discuss, which is also from a corporate perspective, expanding the market of a company. So, all of a sudden, the first role I had in technical marketing, the company put me in charge of a $1 billion acquisition. So, 1,000 million. So this is not an easy job. But then, you kind of, it's end of the day about how good you are in your area of expertise, or how good you want to be in your area of expertise, asking the right questions, and trying to solve customer problems, right? So customer problems for a certain customer or a certain market, sets of markets, and then trying to say, okay, while solving this customer problem, what is in it for the company? And then all of a sudden, you're transitioning more into a sales and a business development role, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's it. End of the day, it's not rocket science. It's just dealing with different sets of problems and then trying to find answers to those problems, right?
Right. Thanks, Ganesh. Before I give the same question to Raghu for a quick answer, I'm gonna echo with Vinay's feelings over here. So I transitioned 2-3 years ago, and I exactly had the same feeling, a negative, not a negative, but a different impression of BD and sales, where a person goes knocking on doors. Yeah. And I didn't want to be that person who goes knocking on doors with large analytical instruments to sell. I somehow had this, I really echo his feelings entirely. I had this feeling that, oh, I have to sell 10 instruments and make the money, and I don't want to be doing that, because that's not what I wanted to derive, let's say, out of my PhD and so on. And of course, for me, it's changed because I'm not knocking doors, but rather I'm really knocking, in this case, probably calls, Zoom meetings, and so on, to understand what the pain point is. So it's really not about selling um, something tangible. It's about selling an idea, and the value that you create with the same idea is different for different customers. And I think that's where you need to be more agile and enable yourself to change your viewpoint so that you could look from every single customer's point of view. So the same, even if it's I don't know, if it's a small bowl or something, probably because that's what is in front of me, it could mean different for different people. And I think that's where you really need an analytical and agile mindset to move. And yeah, I entirely echo Vinay's thoughts over here. Raghu,
I think the other way around, technical people make the best salespeople at the end of the day, because you're selling your product to another technical person, right? So you have to also see it on the positive side at the end of the day.
So it's definitely a positive thing if you have a strong technical background.
Yeah.
I'll ask
So
for
when
final thoughts, Raghu, on that one.
Yeah, so when I saw the question, right, that's where my mind went to straight, because that's the kind of questions a person coming out of the lab would want. Because when you're doing research, I still remember when I was at Yale University, a postdoc, sales guys would come towards your lab, and people are just helter-skelter scattering away. They don't want to talk to salespeople because, oh, that guy's here again bugging me, right? So he wants me to buy something. I don't have the money to buy. I can't answer questions. So that is the mindset that was there long ago. And that is also, I would say, a very, pardon my language, backward-looking mindset, right? When you're saying, a salesperson is coming, he's also a person, right? But they have a different skill set. They have different things for you. And I still face this mindset problem with a friend of mine. He colleague, friend of mine, who still say, okay, Raghu is in sales. Raghu is a sales guy. And that sales thing means different to different people, depending on how you look at it, right? So um, if you look at yourself as a sales guy, car salesman is very different from a technology salesperson, right? So now if you look at the sales population out there, I'd say about above 70%, even 80% of them have a master's or a PhD out there. All BDs, most of them have PhDs in them, right? Only the old school, maybe before 90s, 80s, 90s, were the people who with bachelor's or high school degrees would go out for sales. And the type of sales they were doing is very different from what we're talking in this market, right? This market needs a knowledge base, right? And that knowledge base doesn't come with the person without a higher degree. So respect, right? If the person, I tell people who come talk to me, when they say, I want to go into BD or FAS position or sales position, say, look at yourself, how you were looking at the salesperson who was walking into the door. Are you willing to accept that position for yourself? Are you willing to be that guy who's walking down the floor? If you can live with that, you can do this, right? The second thing is, are you willing to ask for money from some people? Some cultures, Indian cultures, you are not encouraged. You are looked upon, down upon if you ask people money. So that is another mindset in our cultural difference that we have, right? So if you're not comfortable asking for money in return for a product or a service, you'll not be comfortable doing sales and taking pressure of the numbers, like Ganesh mentioned earlier. So I think the negative feeling is from being looked down upon as a salesperson, walking down that corridor, trying to sell you something, push something into you. But if you look at yourself as I'm a PhD, I'm a master's person coming in to enable you to do your job better, right? I'm there to make you better. So then you start getting respect for yourself. So self-respect is very important here, I'd like to say.
And I think just like to add to that is the onus is on you to project yourselves as a guy who just wants to sell the machine and get out and have lunch, or try to create value for the person who's on the other side.
Exactly.
Exactly. So if you take the onus, then you don't come across as this bugging person
Yeah.
there to just
That's
get
how
rid of
my
you.
transition happened, right? So when I was doing my first science job, I was responsible. I was a co-inventor of whole genome amplification, the isothermal, ISO 529 polymerase based DNA amplification, which is called whole genome amplification. So I developed this technology, commercialized, made it into a product, and we were selling it as a company. And I was on the customer support, right? So because I had developed, I could troubleshoot, answer questions. So when I would go out with the marketing people, I would go as a specialist, as a person who developed the technology, and they would do the presentation and they would ask questions. And I was in the audience answering those questions. And I'm like, if I can answer these questions, why can't I do the presentation? Why can't I go into marketing? Right? And then once I went into a technology specialist role, I would go work with salespeople, do presentations, and support salespeople sell the technology. So then I'd say, if they can sell it, why can't I sell it? Right? And then I got numbers, targets, and then your mindset slowly transitions into that. And eventually now you're a salesperson with all the same skills you had before, but you have different respect for your own position.
Totally agreed. Totally agreed with that. So I think we've extended time by 3 minutes, but I think that's fine if we could call.
But are all the questions taken though?
Yes, all the questions. I just got one right now. So John says if the product is good, everyone calls the salesperson, but if the product is bad, the salesperson calls everyone. Is he undermining the sales team? So Raghu, could
That's
you
a
give
good
me
question.
a on that one?
Yeah. So if the product is good, they're calling the salesperson. And if the
Yeah, if the
product,
product is good,
Mhm,
everyone calls the salesperson, probably
mhm,
once more. And if the
mhm.
product is bad, then the salesperson calls everyone probably to sell more, I presume.
Yeah. That's a good question, because technically the salesperson has not developed the product. They have trained on the product. They're trained on the specifications, features, and benefits of the product. So they can only convince the customer to the extent of their knowledge, right? But you always have questions from the left field. So scientist is deep into a particular subject, right? They're very deep into the subject, and the salesperson may not know the subject as much as that specialization. They're the SME, subject matter expert, right? I'm not an expert in all the fields to all the customers I sell to, but I know what they could use, right? So that is the other benefit of being a salesperson, is you interact with different people. I talk to people in cardio, neuro, hepato, right? Blood cancer, every disease, NASH, everything. But I'm
Right.
not an expert in all of that, but I know tools that can help them improve their capacity. And if I have to convince them further, the next step, I bring in a technical specialist. So I have to call the internal team, and that's how you succeed as a team, right? So the sales, marketing, and technical have to function together as a team to make that successful, right? But say if you turn that around, if you say, okay, if they like the product and they call the technical person to buy it, you'll not be able to fulfill the need either, right?
Exactly.
So it's true on both sides. So you have to work as a team to succeed.
But yeah, that's
with
very
the, with
true.
the end goal in mind,
Yeah,
right?
that's very true that the sales and the product development and the tech team have to be very much in coherence. And I don't, without either of them, it's possible. So it's not undermining sales because a technical person cannot go out there, and it takes a different set of mind to identify the other person's problem. The technical person is there to identify their problems and to solve them.
Yeah,
So
and
it
I think
requires,
also,
yeah.
yeah, as you said, Priyanka, also I've been on different corporate roles as well before joining sales, and this is to me not undermining, but then for anyone who's entering in a corporate role, uh, it is important to understand why it's also
Value they create, right?
value the voice of customer. So sometimes when you are a product development scientist or product managers, you have a business plan and then you launch a product, you monitor the performance, and then having, let's say, the feedback from sales is your voice of the customer. Sometimes it's not a direct voice of the customer, but your salespeople are the first line within the company who represent the customers. So it's not really undermining in this case, as Raghu and yourself put it. And it's important to stress that this feedback that you would get from sales is taken in and then goes back to your business case and really say, okay, did I miss out on something, or did I get my customer base or something wrong? Is there some other market that I can target with this product? So this needs to be from a management standpoint, we typically take this serious so that we can then take the subsequent strategic action, right? To continue, to discontinue, to change the direction, or to kind of pull the plug and say, okay, let's redevelop this and then let's
I
launch it.
think the sales
version.
people
So
internally catalyze ideation, right?
yeah,
So you kind of push ideas because then you bring problems back from the customers, exactly like you mentioned, Ganesh. And
yeah.
so it's definitely not a role to undermine for sure. I think you kind of can be multifaceted over here and not necessarily look at yourself as a complaint box, but rather somebody who catalyzes ideation within the company over here. So I think those were all the questions that we had. So from my side, I'd like to thank all the participants. It was a very nice organic conversation that we had. Thanks, Raghu and Ganesh, and I'll hand it over to Jagrati further.
Thank you, Priya, so much. That was such a vibrant discussion. Thank you to Raghu. Thank you to Ganesh for all the wonderful insights, and for all three of you for opening our eyes to BD and sales roles, which for an academician, it's kind of difficult to understand as an outsider. So really, thank you so much. I just want to, in the end, quickly once more remind everyone about the EuroSTEMPeers meeting that we'll have in this year, 28th to 29th of June. And this is just I kind of magnified it. It works. I checked with my phone. So if anyone wants to take a picture of this, it will give you the links to all the social media pages for EuroSTEMPeers. So please go ahead and check us out. We are really a very supportive, vibrant group, and we would like to have many more joining us because we really try to inspire and help each other out, which was so evident from today's conversation as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And I hope.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, for the nice
And
questions.
I just
So,
want to also say on the STEMPeers page, if you're all not part of the STEMPeers page as well, look up there. I had done another presentation about all the different roles of BDs and stuff, and other roles, not just BD and sales alone, but there's so many more career tracks that you can pursue, look into. So good luck to everybody in their future careers, and feel free to reach out and connect. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a nice weekend, everyone.
bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.